Hello, everyone. We welcome you all to our water webinar series. And today's webinar, Water and the Circular Economy, is being organized by Ecocivilisation in association with Women. I'm thrilled to see so many of you joining us from different parts of the world today. And so friends, as we all know that water is a critical component of the circular economy, as it plays a crucial role in many of the circular processes and systems that aim to reduce waste, increase resource efficiency, and promote sustainability. In the circular economy, water is seen as a valuable resource that should be managed carefully and efficiently to minimize waste and maximize its potential uses. This includes using water more efficiently in industrial processes, reusing wastewater for irrigation and other non-potable uses, and of course, treating and recycling water to make it available for drinking and other purposes. In today's session, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers who will be sharing their expertise on the topic at hand. The objective of this webinar is to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our audience, and we hope that you will find it informative and engaging. So let me begin the session by inviting founder and curator of Ecocivilisation and very illustrious leader, 𝕤𝕡𝕤𝕤𝐽𝐻 to deliver the core message and set the tone of the event.
Thank you very much, Rajni, and it's a real privilege also from my side to see you all. And I'm really hoping for a lot of activities in chat because this topic is one of the essential topics for our future anyway. That's why we certainly seek as broad as possible engagement and really bring as many good initiatives and good thoughts to the table, to the discussion, and even more importantly, that we finally find some really good points of joint actions. As Rajni mentioned, this is brought to you by Ecocivilisation movement, which is now spreading all over the world. We're in more than 40 countries, and we are hoping to cover the whole world in the next few years. And we do believe that this discussion is really relevant. So I don't want to stay on the surface, but we are invited to go deep, to really touch uncomfortable points of humanity, of the way how we deliver our day-to-day lives, and really start focusing on the essential parts that support this incredible privilege being alive on this beautiful planet Earth. So Ecocivilisation, I claim to be more than just hope, more than just a dream, and more than just you and I. It is possibly a ticket for our prosperity and existence in the future. How it's going to look like is a matter of emergence. It's a matter of our dreams, our imagination, and how we're going to connect with each other, and how we're going to be able to collectively envision the society that we would like to live in. So that's why it's really important that we engage with each other, we get to know each other, and that we actually do that over relevant topics. And I dare to claim that water is one of those relevant topics. And our mission with this year of water, and also the book that we plan to bring forward at the end of this year of water, is to reimagine our relationship with water, to really recognize all levels of dimension that the water has, being an element of social interaction, business interaction, but even beyond that, it's an incredible element of global connectivity and communication, and as such has very powerful spiritual dimension as well. And last week, when we were hosting the UN side effect on the Day of Water, some interesting key messages evolved out of that. And one of them was that the water is a really wicked problem and is calling for sympathetic engagement of a state, markets, academia, and civil movement actors, basically the entire humanity. And water is an abstract term as well, so we need to go deep in our problem solving. We are invited not to oversimplify, overgeneralize things, but really go down to the community level, because community level has its specifics and include the community science in a decision-making process. Responsibility for water, because of that, is not the same, but it is a common responsibility. And that is a very appealing proposition and invitation to all of us. The message was also very clear that love and water are two frequencies and two elements that unite us. And as such, we are invited to look at water as an empathetic system of the planet as a whole. And the Year of Water is brought to you by 3 active associations, which are all connected through Ecocivilisation, but Rajni, who's incredible leader of WAC Women, and our driver in this Year of Water, which is Professor Nini, who leads the Myanmar Water Academy and really well connected and established in the water society. Of course, I need to mention also Yuko, who is today with us. She is this fresh, young energy who brings art, the dimension of art, to our meetings, to our sessions, and really reminds us how art is opening the edges, is allowing us to go beyond what is established criteria or established perception, and invite us to dare to actually seek new solutions. So Yuko, thank you very much for your engagement. It is also a special privilege that the grandmothers of the world recognized our Year of Water as an important contribution in the process of developing greater respect for water itself. And they allowed us to run their song, which is dedicated to water, as the starting song of all of our sessions. So please allow me to just do that before we continue.
Granddaughter, the water can hear you. The water has memory.
Nibi,
Nibi,
Wabo,
Wabo,
Endayan,
Endayan.
Nibi, Wabo, Endayan, Aki Mismi, Nibi, Wabo, Heya, 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 Hey, Heya, 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 Oh.
Water is the life's blood of our mother, the earth. Water is the lifeblood of our own body.
Nibi, Wabo, Endayan, Aki Mismi, Nibi, Wabo, Heya, 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 Hey, Heya, 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 Ho.
To continue to pass on the knowledge that needs to be given unto the other generations. You are the keeper of the water.
Nibi, Wabo, Endayan, Aki Mismi, Nibi, Wabo, Heya, 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 Hey, Heya, 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 Ho.
To make the change in this life condition that we're in, that great-grandchildren will stand up to this truth of what life is about, and to live it in such an honorable way, the way ancestors came to this earth.
Nibi, Wabo, Endayan, Aki Mismi, Nibi, Wabo, Heya,
Each day when the sun rises, no matter how bad the day before might have been, there's a new chance for your hopes and dreams. And I say, 𝐿𝐴𝐺𝐵, thank you for singing the water song.
Nibi wabo endayen aki miskwi nibi wabo heya 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 hey heya 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 ho.
And of course, with that frequency and that emotional and spiritual connection to this precious source that means life, and it's really the saying, we are water, is direct representation of who we are. And before I pass the word back to Rajni, who prepared this wonderful session today, I'd just like to show you a few figures that really shocked me and motivates me even more to engage in a topic of water also within the circular economy topic. And you can see that there is enormous amount of water, drinking water, used for something that we could address some other way. For example, for toilets and showering, we use almost half of all the water that is used in domestic consumption. And that is certainly something that drinking water doesn't need to be. Equally surprising, at least for me, was amount of water that is completely lost from the system and never recorded and never charged for, which means that this is one of the most, the least efficient business we are actually currently dealing with, because in no other business you could survive with such a wasted loss in the whole process. So a lot of things to think about, and you can see that the water consumption, the predictions are really rising really fast. So if we don't address these essential challenges, how are we going to actually deal with it all together on a societal level? So it is more than appropriate that water and circular economy topics are over and over emphasized and brought in the front of a discussion of circular economy. Because right now, the water sector has not been systematically included in a high-level circular economy strategic discussions at all. So when I did a bit of analysis of all the literature that was available, and based on that, tried to generate a circular economy water model, we can see that is actually included in all bits and pieces of circular economy. So yes, we need to rethink our strategy, the way how we deal with it, the way how we distribute it, and as such, it becomes a subject of all elements of circular economy. Reduce, so how can we avoid the use of so much water, how we can reduce or even replace the water with some other means or maybe even other technologies. Then retain, so how can we recover already destroyed water, and how can we store water better for later consumption? And of course, then optimize, so being able to reuse, cascade, recycle, or even reclaim as a whole. And then this big topic that is today emerging along the side of circular economy, which is the regenerative, where water is one of the essential elements besides soil that can potentially be largely regenerated as well. So taking into consideration also the third element that is equally important, which is the donut economy, which is teaching us about the boundaries of Earth. And even though it seems like the water is unlimited resource, of course, that it's not true. And in some previous session, Rajni pointed that out really well when she said that it's really only 1% of water globally that it's a drinkable water. All the rest is in oceans and in other means engaged in the overall ecosystem of Mother Nature. So yes, rethink and reimagine are very appropriate topics. And I know that every single session in our overall discussion in the year of water is bringing a little piece to a higher level of awareness, clarity, and hopefully it will also bring to some very concrete actions, which Ecocivilisation in action, that's what we stand for. So thank you very much, Rajni, and the word goes back to you.
Thank you very much, Violeta. There's always a lot more to learn from you. Every time I hear you, I feel so blessed, and your insights are always very powerful and valuable. Thank you so much. And it's time to introduce our first speaker of the day, who is from Spain, 𝐿𝐵𝐴 Jiménez Navarro, founder of NESSEA, a circular economy and sustainability consultancy. She's certified in circular economy by the International University of Valencia, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and the Circular Economy Institute. With a passion for finding and promoting solutions to current challenges, let's welcome 𝐿𝐵𝐴. 𝐿𝐵𝐴, over to you.
Hello, thank you so much, Rajni, for the presentation, Violeta, and everybody from Ecocivilisation for inviting me to participate in this webinar, in this series of webinars, and talking about a topic that I totally agree with Violeta. We don't talk as much as we should about water, so it's really great that you set up this space for us to talk about it. And as you said, I am from Spain. I'm Spanish, so I'm going to talk very much about my perspective from my country, and also a little bit my personal experience, because as you will see in my presentation, we have a very specific challenge with water in Spain right now. So I'm going to share my screen, if I can do that very quickly. Is it working? Yeah, okay. Yeah, so as I said, I'm going to talk about water and circular economy from my perspective, from working on circular economy angles, and also as a citizen of a country that, as I said, has quite a few challenges around water. So I'm going to talk first just a little bit so you understand what those challenges are, a little bit of context on what water means in Spain, and then I will advance into what are some of the solutions and strategies that we're starting to implement regarding water and circular economy. So first of all, as you know, Spain has quite a large part of its coastline on the Mediterranean region, on the Mediterranean basin. And the Mediterranean region, regarding climate change, we're facing also quite a dire situation. It's warming 20% faster than the global average. We're already seeing the effects of that in the rise of seawater temperature. It increases every single year. We're having drier and drier seasons. And all the coastal areas, especially around the Mediterranean coast, are also very heavily populated. So all these risks around climate change are also going to affect like a very huge amount of the population from the countries that we're in this region of the world. And the Mediterranean, because actually it's home to more than 100 million people, but it's also a very hot spot for tourism. So in the peak times of the tourist season, which is mainly around summer months, which is also where there's less water availability, we also have the higher demand of this resource. So we have a big challenge also to face, how we can manage that demand of the increase in population that we have during those drier months. Also mostly from a lot of people that come from northern parts of, for example, of Europe, of other countries where they don't have this water shortages. So when they come here, sometimes they tend to use and consume as much water as they would in their countries without knowing that they should kind of adapt to the climate that they're in. So we have like that double kind of bar from residents and also from the tourist demand that we get in the whole Mediterranean region, and in Spain it's no different. And actually, the perspectives are not really good, because by 2050 it's expected that the water demand will double or even triple in the Mediterranean region. And an increase of, if we wouldn't manage to handle climate change, and the increase of the mean global average temperature would be from 2 to 4 degrees, it would mean that we would have less, a 30% decrease in rainfall in the region. But even if we cut it down and could kind of stick to just the limit of 2 degrees, we would still have a reduction in rainfall to 15% in a region that is already quite dry by itself. So it would have like a very big impact. And if we consider just Spain in itself, this is a map of the average rainfall, the average annual rainfall in the whole of the country. And as you can see, well, the darker blue shaded areas are the areas where there's heavier rainfall, because we have this coastline to the east that is mainly the Mediterranean region. We have the Balearic Islands, which is actually where I live, in this part here. And we have the Canary Islands, which are a little bit down into the west coast of Africa. But then we have this Atlantic region where we have a very different climate. It's more humid. There tends to be more rainfall in comparison to all the rest of the country, where we have some areas. These areas in white is that there's hardly any rainfall at all during the year. So they're almost like desert-like kind of areas in the east of Spain and some parts inside of the peninsula. And the rest has kind of an average to low rainfall expected every year. And the contrast of this is also that, for example, this part here that I was just mentioning has a very high demand of water for irrigation, because the agricultural sector here, the demand for agriculture and growing crops that require quite high amount of water is very high, precisely in regions where there's not that much water. And it's actually known sometimes as the Garden of Europe, because a lot of the crops that are grown here of fruit and vegetables are then exported to other parts of the region. So already you can see that it doesn't make a lot of sense, like how we're distributing economic activities regarding water supply, because of the agriculture and also because of the tourism that I said that is also very relevant in all these areas of the Mediterranean coast. And just as Violeta was sharing in her slide, also in Spain, 75% of the consumption of water goes to agriculture. So I think it's an average that repeats itself along many countries. And that has led, that kind of gradient that we have from the north to the south has led to also some social tensions and some political issues regarding water, what we've called the water wars here in Spain, which is also quite common. And it's something that I've been hearing and experiencing also for quite a few decades now, even when I was a kid, that you would have these drier regions, but that have this very intense agricultural activity demand the water from the regions that have more rainfall. So you end up having these large infrastructures that transfer water from one river basin to the other, basically to compensate that difference in a resource that is, in theory, should be shared among the country. But this leads to a lot of political debates and tensions when there is any changes regarding the supply of water, especially from the eastern side of Spain. If they see that it can be compromised, then it's just used as a political issue and creates a lot of social tension, and it's disregarded, not so much thinking about the ecosystem and how to manage water properly, but just how to fit like different political needs and different as. So it's quite sad to see how this very valuable resource is used in that way. And also sadly, another very common characteristic of how we use water also in the country, and again related to agriculture, is the illegal extraction of water. It's also quite common, and has been very common for decades, to have like this is like a tiny well that people just dig and drill in their lands straight to extract groundwater for irrigation, for agriculture in places where they don't have enough rainfall. So of course, well, this is illegal and it should be prosecuted and fined, but there is estimated to be from several hundred thousands to close to a million illegal extraction points in the whole country. And there's not enough resources to prosecute them all. And this is having a very very severe impact on important ecosystems, especially wetlands. Like this one, for example, is one in the center of the peninsula, the Tablas de Daimiel, which is a Ramsar site. And it depends obviously on the aquifer, on the water that is coming out from the aquifer, but this one is being extracted and pumped just for irrigation, and it kind of threatens the whole ecosystem. Also in the south of Spain, if you saw like the image that I showed you at the beginning, the Doñana Park, it's in the southwest of Spain, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And again, there's a lot of illegal extraction of water, in this case for the strawberry fields, well, greenhouses mainly, of strawberries that again are shipped to all the European region. And it's really threatening this World Heritage Site and UNESCO site also in that wetland. So also from the European Union and from UNESCO, there's been petitions to the Spanish government to actually prosecute this, because it's really threatening vital and very valuable ecosystems. And on top of all that, we have like a very extreme kind of weather already in the country. We have, but this is absolutely like normal. This is characteristic of where Spain is at geographically. So we tend to have periods of droughts. It's very common to have this. And I remember being a kid that sometimes we would have like a period of maybe 1, even maybe 2 years of drought. And you would have campaigns on the TV, so we would all be more aware of the use that we made of water in our homes. I didn't experience any restrictions myself, but there were places that there were restrictions being imposed to control the demand of water. But then it's also very typical that we would get these floods, so especially in the Mediterranean coast after the summer months. You get these periods of very strong rainfall in just like 2 or 3 days that just creates these flash floods that run down the whole cities and just flood all the crops and just run straight back into the sea. And if those areas have already been very heavily eroded, they're already very dry because of the lack of rainfall, then the floods have an even worse effect. But this is kind of normal. But of course, this is something that is going to be more severe due to climate change. And we're already experiencing that in the last few years. This year, we're already dragging the drought from last year. We're entering 2023 still with the reservoirs quite low. This spring, the winter was very dry. The spring hasn't started very well either. So we're already anticipating like a very bad summer months this year regarding water availability. And it was also very impactful last autumn, last fall, regarding the floods. So we also have to live with this reality that this each time is going to be more and more severe, these kind of two opposites of very long and severe droughts with high episodes of rainfall that would just erode even more the land. And it's actually calculated that almost half of the population in Spain already lives in areas where water consumption exceeds the available resources. And almost like 3 million, which would be like 1/10 of the population around, lives in area of severe water stress. So we really have to adapt to this new reality and to face those challenges that I mentioned before about the way that we have used water, especially regarding to agriculture. So how are we managing this? Well, not enough, but at least we are starting to take some steps. And here I just wanted to mention, and it's something that Violeta has already highlighted, how we should be including more water within the circular economy discussions, because I work a lot with circular economy in different forums and documents, and we do talk a lot about material flows. I don't know if you're familiar with the Ellen MacArthur, the butterfly diagram that has like the technical flow of the technical cycle of technical materials and the biological cycle of biological materials, and then the extraction to waste and the whole process. And we talk a lot about material flows, but we don't talk so much about how water and energy goes through all these flows. I do kind of do that when I give presentations and talk about the concept of circular economy. I always highlight that there's inputs of energy and water throughout the whole processes, and there's outputs of energy and water throughout all these processes. And I like this diagram. That's why I included it in the presentation, because it's from a Spanish foundation related to, well, environmental work. And they have kind of started to try to do that, to include like the water cycle within the biological cycle of the concept of how everything should to circle back and be more circular, all the flows regarding the circular economy concept, and using that diagram of the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. So just wanted to highlight that it should be a concept that we should include more and more water as a resource within, when we're talking about making flows more circular. We should think also about water. And actually, in our circular economy strategy, we have one in Spain that was launched in 2020. We have our own circular economy strategy that is kind of inspired by the European circular economy strategy. And in this strategy, we can already see that because water is a very limiting resource in our country, and it's going to be even more so, as I have already explained, we have our own target to improve water use efficiency by 10% by 2030. All the targets that are in the circular economy strategy are aimed at 2030. And this might not seem like too much, but considering the baseline where we're starting from, well, it's achievable. It's not overly ambitious, but I think it's ambitious enough, while at the same time being achievable. And in the first action plan that comes from this circular economy strategy, there's a specific focus also on water, using water as a resource, and it focuses mostly on water use and water treatment. And the ways forward that we can do that, the strategy is done obviously by the government, but then there's other entities that are also working on circular economy and circular economy on water. And this is from the Chamber of Commerce of Spain, that has a Circular Economy Commission, and they have a task group on water. And they have identified like these 6 areas where we should, or 6 types of actions where we should work to achieve that target for the circular economy strategy, and also start changing the way that we're using water and being more efficient given the horizon that we have ahead of us with climate change. So obviously one of them is directly making water use more circular by reuse and giving more value to the waste that is created also when we treat water. And that's related to turning wastewater treatment plants to biofactories, which I will show you right now in a minute. Also, how can the new technologies and all the data management that we can do and the monitoring that we can do with all the digital technologies can help us to also be more efficient in the use of water, like all the technologies that are coming up that help us with data management and analytics are becoming more and more relevant to all the sustainability and circularity strategies. And obviously water is not going to be any different. Also, how to promote green infrastructures, which I will also show an example in the coming slides. And of course, we have to deal with irrigation, with that 75% of water demand that comes from agriculture. We have to change the way that we grow our crops, make irrigation more efficient, reduce the demand, consider how the climate is going to change, how climate change is going to affect the different crops that we grow in the country, and also take into account those social and those territorial circumstances that make this a very, very sensitive topic, at least in Spain. And that's why it's used also in the political debate, because it's a topic that really creates like very extreme positions. And above all, we have to be more resilient with how we manage water through all these infrastructures, how we manage the demand, and how we protect ourselves against those increased water risks that we have of droughts and of severe floods that are going to be more and more going to occur more frequently. And all this has to be supported by investment, obviously, and supported by the public and the private sector collaborating with each other. That's important to get all these type of actions moving forward. So just as some examples on some of those actions that I just mentioned, water regeneration is something that we have been using for a while, mostly in urban settings. In many of the Mediterranean countries, not only Spain, but also like Greece, Italy, Malta, Cyprus, we've already been for quite a few decades trying to see how we could regenerate water and give it a second life, a second use. And it depends on the different treatments. You get different qualities of water. So there's some limits to what you can do with the water, depending on this quality. Like the lowest quality you could use for gardens, for example, like this one. This is a park in Madrid, a very famous one that is that's irrigated using regenerated water. Also, you can use it for street cleaning, for toilets. And then if you go to the second level of quality, you can use it for agriculture. You can use it for golf courses, which is something that we also have a lot of in Spain, regardless, despite being water so scarce, we have a lot of golf courses and theme parks and things like that. The problem with water regeneration is that the legislation is not advancing as fast as the technology. So it's limiting the applications that we can give to this water, because really the technologies are quite advanced and we could use it more widely and in other settings. But because legislation is lagging behind, then it's kind of stopping this from being more promoted and being more widely used in other than what we already do. Another idea that I mentioned, and I think that it's really interesting, is creating, we have already quite a few examples of this, which is changing wastewater treatment plants to what they're called biofactories. So instead of, well, the typical thing that you would do, you would get the water coming from the urban area, and it would go to the wastewater treatment plant, and then the water would be cleaned, and some of it will go back into the water system. We changed this into something that creates even more resources. And in these examples of the ones that we have already changed here in Spain, not only are they have their own, they generate their own electricity through solar panels, but also through the gas that is generated through the treatment processes that creates biogas that can also fuel the facility. Of course, you get water that is regenerated and can go back to the system to be reused in many different ways. And then from the muds that are created as waste from this process, you can use them as fertilizers. The sands also can help improve the drainage of the soil. So overall, 97% of the waste, of the solid waste that is created in wastewater treatment plants with this concept of turning it all into a biofactory can actually be turned into value. So it's changing. Sorry if some of my diagrams are in Spanish, but I couldn't find the English version of them. So it's changing this paradigm of waste treatment plants to just be a place where they use energy, they consume energy, and they do clean just water, and they create waste into being something that is creating actually resources more than taking them. So it's giving it more of a twist and becoming that positive impact. And another important element that we're using is what you call like nature-based solutions, where you actually use natural processes to give solution to some of the processes that we need to manage more technically, more through engineering to them. And a lot of these things you're seeing more and more, especially in urban settings. And this is an example of a drainage system that uses this natural processes that would happen through what you would call this floodable park. This is in Alicante, which is a city in the Mediterranean coast of Spain. And it's a city also that doesn't have enough rainfall and that gets all these flash floods during strong rainfalls after the summer that I have already mentioned. So they have created this urban park, which instead of having like different storm deposits that you would have sometimes to manage that water, that runoff water that is just flooding the streets and that sometimes they don't have enough capacity, you create this green space that will eventually act, it will channel that water and will eventually act kind of like a sponge. So all this that you see here right now, I will just play a short video that you can see how it works. All this that you see here that is green could actually be all covered in water. It would act like a sponge, and then it will store all this water. So after the rain, we would have access to that water to then give it another use and manage it in a different way instead of all just flooding through the street and then going straight into the sea. So it's a way of creating this, what you would do now, what you would do before with like gray infrastructures, with built infrastructures, to have something more in a natural setting that also promotes biodiversity, and it's like more of a greener urban planet, or urban planning, sorry. And in this short video, you can see like a simulation of how these kind of floodable parks would work. It has some music, but if you can't hear it, it's okay. So what these designs they do is basically they mimic what the wetlands that were actually in most of these areas, what they would used to do before we built the cities on them. Because a lot of these parts of the Mediterranean coast would have these wetlands in like Alicante, Valencia, where now you have like big cities, and those wetlands would obviously act as these kind of sponges to control all that flooding and to protect also the coastline. And now we've built all over them, so we have all that water that just runs through the streets, like in creating like a lot of damage and in a very high speed. And this is a way to kind of go a little bit back to what it used to be like before we built all those cities upon those types of ecosystems. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention also is how we can start implementing water reuse in buildings. And this is something that in Spain we're lagging behind quite a lot. It's happening a little bit like what happened with solar panels back in like maybe like 10, 15 years ago, where in Spain it would still be rare to see solar panels especially like in residential buildings and in independent buildings, not like in public ones. And we would always say here that it didn't make any sense that you would go to countries in the northern part of Europe where you have like less days of sunlight, and they would have more solar panels than here that we have like almost 330 days of direct sunlight. And we weren't using all that natural energy, all that renewable energy that we had. But now we do have to put those solar panels in buildings. There's legislation that we have to put solar panels or thermal solar panels, but it doesn't happen in the same way still with water reuse. There's some local legislations that do oblige like new residential buildings to include like gray water reuse systems, but it's not still widely used, and it's still an element that we really have to work a lot and implement a lot. This example that I put here in this photograph is of a hotel in a city also in the south of Spain, where they have installed this is kind of a green infrastructure, which is a vertical garden, but that is irrigated with gray water that comes from the sinks and the showers of the hotel. So it's using that water, it's not using up water from the local network. And then obviously all these green infrastructures within the cities, they also help with modulating the temperature, cleaning the air. So it has a lot of positive and benefit elements of it. And in this case, it's also reusing water. And we should see more and more of these things. And it's still quite rare. So this is something that we really have to work on. How can we reuse water more in our cities within the constructions and within the buildings? So just to finish off, and here I see that I also use some of the words that Violeta has mentioned. So we see we're all in the same page. These are all like examples of case studies. We still have a long way to go, at least in my country, in Spain, regarding water circularity, because it's not mentioned so much still, although it really is an issue that it's in everybody's minds, and we talk about it in the news about having droughts and wildfires because it doesn't rain, but we really don't do that much about it. So it's a little bit frustrating. So we have to make all these different examples be more the norm, and especially given the horizon that we have on water scarcity due to climate change, it's urgent that we implement these measures more and more widely, and that we have the legislation also to promote it and to incentivize it. And this has to be complemented with the regeneration of natural aquatic ecosystems, because we have really mistreated them. We have drained them dry, literally. And they have always acted as water reservoirs or water filters, and they have protected us from floods, they have protected from erosion. So we have to regenerate them and bring them back. And this is a concept that is very much linked to the circular economy, is actually one of the principles of a circular economy, but it's not talked so much in sometimes linking to circularity. And the word regeneration should be just directly linked to circularity every time we talk about circular economy and how we can apply it to different settings, because it's a way to have a positive impact. So yes, we have to reduce the amount of water we use, find ways to reuse it more, and definitely regenerate all the ecosystems that depend on it, because we depend on those ecosystems too. And so thank you very much, gracias from my side, and I hope you enjoy the presentation. And I'm happy to answer questions, or at the end of the presentation, I'll show when that's going to happen, and looking forward to my other fellow speakers.
Thank you, Elvira. Thank you so much, and really appreciate the depth of knowledge and experience you bring to today's conversation. And I have a question for you. As a citizen of Spain, who have, I think you have been in Spain since your childhood. You spent entire childhood in Spain, the way you were explaining. So what level of awareness do you see among general masses, especially in school-going kids around you related to water stress? And, are they conscious about the fact that water is scarce resource and they have to use it wisely? Do you see that consciousness awareness?
Well, actually, and I don't see it. I have two kids myself, and what I see is that actually my generation is more aware of maybe because we did live through a period where there were stronger campaigns and things, but I don't see it so much now. Like right now, we're again in a period of drought, and I see that, for example, with the younger generations, they are talking a lot about recycling and reducing and plastic pollution and a lot of other things, but with a topic that is so essential to us here in our context, I don't see that awareness, and I think it's very worrying because it's something that has to be talked about from all these different settings, like from government campaigns, from companies, from schools, especially from educational settings. And I don't really see that there's any focus, and it's something that it's really, really worrying, and it's gonna be, we have it right at our doorstep. We already know how to deal with droughts in a certain way, but not with very intense droughts and very intense floodings. And there's also this misunderstanding sometimes that because you get like 2 or 3 days of very heavy rainfall, that is just gonna solve the problem. So people say like, okay, we have a drought, but now we've had like 1 week where we've had like 4 days of heavy rain, so the drought is over. And it doesn't work like that, because especially when you have like very heavy rain, that water just goes away, so to speak, no? You have to have like a constant, frequent, slower pace. And so there's a lot of lack of knowledge and education on generally how water works, and especially on water efficiency and better water consumption at home and in all other settings.
Thank you so much, and we encourage all our viewers to actively participate in the discussion, ask questions, and engage with the speakers. And if there is any question for Elvira, please put it in the comment box. And if there is no question as of now, so we will move to
I see there's one. There's just one. Yeah, it's obvious that nature-based solutions should be more integrated in the urban environment. What are the roadblocks facing in your city or municipality? Is it a governance problem or budgets? I think it's mostly budgets. Right now, it's still a bit of a sophisticated kind of technologies and of solutions to apply. So they tend to still to go through the typical like infrastructure, like what you call like the gray infrastructure, like concrete and more kind of that type of engineering. This is still not so much. You can see it more in private initiatives when someone will want to do like a very like a building that is very visually appealing, like this case of a hotel or an exhibition center, something like that. They will try to integrate like vertical gardens or in a specific neighborhood, because you can also put other type of nature-based solutions in other places. But other than that, there's I think it's mostly the budget. But the case of the floodable parks, I've already seen it in 2 or 3 cities, and I guess that when it might be easier to find or to justify the budget that you use for that, because it's something that is enjoyable afterwards by everybody, whereas other type of green infrastructures are more like limited in that sense. So that one is more sellable, so to speak, and it's easier to find the budget for that.
Thank you, Elvira. Thank you so much. And okay, there is one more question for you. What do you see as key to stimulating the shift to livable cities?
Well, I think, actually we had that with COVID. It was quite a shift of mentality of how we would relate to cities, and how we were very kind of trapped in our cities. We didn't have, even when you were able to go out, you didn't have any parks. So a lot of people are changing their perspective, and also you can see that already in in some governance strategies and in municipalities, that has kind of made a little bit of a click in some people's minds. But I think that there is more demand to have more cities where there's more better quality of air and more open spaces, mostly to be able to enjoy. And I think that's slowly happening. And I think that COVID has given a bit of a wake-up call in that sense, that we've realized that we're surrounded too much by streets and roads, and the cities are made for the cars and not the people. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Elvira. And as we shift our focus to the next presentation, I encourage everyone to stay engaged and take notes of that. And welcome our next speaker, who comes from India, Ranjan K. Panda, popularly known as Water Man of Odisha, and also as a climate crusader in India, who was awarded by the President of India with the first Green Hero by NDTV-TOYOTA. A sociologist by education, has more than 3 decades of experience in facilitating in several initiatives, starting from grassroots to national as well as South Asia levels, to promote water, environmental conservation, and climate change advocacy. He convenes 2 active networks, Water Initiative and Combat Climate Change Network. He is well-known expert on water, sanitation, disaster, and climate change issues, and also a senior columnist. He also leads the Youth for Water India campaign and the Commons Climate Connect initiatives. And Ranjan, now I'll step back and let you take over.
Thank you. I think I'm really privileged to have been invited to this webinar, Rajni. And I'm really impressed also by the presentation that Violeta made at the beginning. If I'm pronouncing correctly, and if I'm not, then sorry. I'm impressed because some of the concepts and ideas that you presented on the eco-civilization completely align not only with my heart, but also with the campaigns that we promote. So I think really proud to be here, and a great presentation, Elvira. So some of these I'll also touch upon. I don't have a presentation to show because I just wanted to speak, I think, from the experiences. Something that I'm picking up from what Violet has said is, and something that we're trying to do, there are 2 approaches to, to basically cater to the crisis that we are facing at the moment. And both are interconnected. And that's like the whole world is now looking for new technologies to help us through this circular economy concept, deviating or going away from the linear economy concept. But then there have been this supreme technology already existing in many parts of the world, that is nature. So that's the reason you see nature-based solutions is something that we are now more emphasizing on. And something that Violeta also mentioned is, the love and water. So for us, it is love for water. I think that could actually change a lot in our approaches. And something we keep on telling, and basically we're trying to harp on, is the very basic perception about water, about nature. I think statistics are at one place, but then society, as Elvira said very rightly, it's the people who actually matter, and it's the people whose relationship with nature is something that we need to harp on if we are really thinking of an economy which is renewing itself. So economy to us, in fact, is something which is rejuvenating itself, and it is actually in a way sustainable. So coming to that, we were running a campaign at the moment called Youth for Water India, as Rajni mentioned. And India still has many generations existing who are connected to nature very much. There is there are 2 worlds within India, based on our experience, work experience. One is basically which is starting to see that water from taps and bottles. And there is another generation which still thinks that, water actually comes from the rivers, from the water bodies, from the groundwater aquifers, and most importantly from the monsoon, which in fact is the is the base of a circular economy if we actually talk about it. So what I call always is, monsoon is the driver of our economy, and without monsoon, actually a proper monsoon, India's economy, India's societies, India's cultures, the diverse cultures of India, they are already suffering. They are already and they are going to suffer. So I think whenever you talk about circular economy, I would say nature-based economy, which actually is circular, and water being a very important ingredient. We should first, in Indian kind of a context, I would say, we should first talk about the perceptions, the changing perception of the people. So we now have the millennials, we now have the Generation X. They call it the G, but that's pronounced as Z. We are just trying to learn from the youth all this, and there is a huge transition that is happening. So statistically, as I said, water sanitation systems are actually responsible for 6% of the total global greenhouse gas emissions, and we are all struggling to change that. How with more nature-based solutions, how technological innovations, how the IoTs, the artificial intelligence, everything could actually make everything efficient. But then efficiency in the technology, efficiency in the infrastructure, can those be really sustained if there is a degradation or if there is detachment from the perception that nature is supreme? I think that is where I would like to say, and I will start, because the grandmother's song was played to us. We could not somehow hear it properly for some technical errors, but I think that is something takes me to a poem that T.S. Eliot had actually written in early 90s in the 4 quatrains for the modern generation of those times in Western countries, who had already started viewing rivers as commodities for human comfort. And that is something that I'll come to in my presentation. And what T.S. Eliot said, and that I think we need to remind ourselves again and again, is, I do not know much about gods, but I think that the river is a strong brown god, sullen, untamed, and intraceable. Patient to some degree at first, recognized as a frontier, useful, untrustworthy, as a conveyor of commerce, then only a problem confronting the builder of breezes. The problem once solved, the brown god is almost forgotten by the dwellers in the cities, however, implacable, keeping his seasons and races, destroyer, reminder of what men chose to forget, unhonored, unpropitiated, of what men chose to forget, unhonored, unpropitiated by worshippers of the machine, but waiting, watching, and waiting. I think if I actually go back to this poem, then something that we are now realizing, working with the youth, is and many civilizations, mostly the cities. When do we remember a river? When do we remember a river? Only when it floods. Only when the river floods, we come out on streets, we say it's cursing us. It's like destroying our homes. But then in tropical areas like ours, where a river have to dry off, they have to dry off, water bodies have to dry off. They're not like oceans. They're not like the glacial fed rivers, that they will be perennial. But the peninsular rivers, the tropical rivers, they all dry off. And when they dry off, we find the river plains, the flood plains, the river beds, all dump yards. I think that is where the perception battle has to be actually fought. And if you start looking into that, I think I'm going from that side to the circular economy side, is that, first you have to recognize the resource that you have been blessed with. Otherwise, wasting water is something nobody cares. No matter how many kilometers, India is still having areas where people are finding it very difficult to actually go and fetch fresh water for their drinking purpose and other purposes. But India is also the country which is running perhaps the most ambitious project to make water reach to every household. So there is, while this is also the case, and this is also going to give rise to the next problem, that is grey water management, because many of the people are actually socially, perceptionally, and behaviorally actually do not know how to use tap water. So that's a new challenge that India is facing, and India is very rightly committed to invest a lot in circular economy in water. But then unless the more the detachment happens, the more something that we are finding, we're studying the perception level of young people and others, is that the more tap water comes to your home, because traditionally you have not been used to that, the more you are actually detached from the sources of water. The knowledge that actually the water source is somewhere else and that needs to be protected. And the idea that somebody else will protect, the idea that the government is going to protect it, is actually not helping. So I think if we are actually talking about a circular economy, then we have to work at the behavioral level. And then while working at the behavioral level, as I said, there are two worlds within India. One, the urban world, then the second, the rural world. The urban world is actually, you must have seen, has become more insensitive. They talk a lot, they are educated, they're talking, they have the textbook knowledge on reuse, recycling and everything. But actually there are for several reasons, our cities are not very as aggressively, putting off recycling initiatives, reuse initiatives as they are. There are examples, there are stray examples, there are sporadic examples, but then of everything. Like there is in Hyderabad, for example, there are researches that being done to put urban wastewater into agriculture use. There are several other places where nature-based solutions are already being used, and water is being used for lawns and golf courses, as Elvira was saying. So we also ironically have very water scarce regions as well as golf courses, and our cricket fields take a lot of water. So there have also been conflicts around those in Maharashtra some time back, if you might have heard. So I think there are issues that can be tackled with the traditional knowledge system that India already has, and but then the cities are growing unsustainable. For example, the last time the IT hub of India, Karnataka, Bangalore, saw the flash floods. You see the irony, the image, there were contrasting images. People who never cried for the protection of local lakes and water bodies, they were the people who had the costliest of vehicles, cars, but they were running on the streets on tractors that's used by the farmers. So I think these are contrasting images that India is now seeing, and mostly because water is getting erratic. Water is destroying us in many ways. Rainfall that I started with, monsoon rainfall, that is summer rainfall, that's popularly called as summer rainfall, that happens between June to September, and powers in more than 70% of water for India, and that it actually recharges and recycles a lot of our, most of our water resources, is getting erratic. Where the distribution is getting erratic. So there are already spatial and temporal variabilities. Each region is not receiving the same kind of water, but then now the erraticity, now the extreme events due to climate change, and many various other factors, like some of the intense irrigation pockets also drive extreme rainfall events, tampering with the local monsoon patterns. I think these are also issues that need to be taken into consideration when we are talking about how to use, reuse, and recycle our water resources. But then the cities, are they really prepared is something we need to work on. And as far as my knowledge goes, we have very little effort so far going on in our cities. That is one area where we need to work on. And as Elvira was saying, a lot of nature-based solutions could be actually tried out inside the cities. But the irony is, we have lost the sponges. I was studying about the Chinese initiative on sponge cities some time back. But then our cities were already sponge cities. They had hundreds of water bodies. For example, Delhi itself had almost 1,300 lakes and water bodies, which is now reduced by almost near to 50%. So we had these kind of water bodies. We had all these surface water bodies, and we had all the forests. So many cities have actually developed by clearing the natural forests and wildlife habitats. So now what we are now doing is something like very ironic, because we have destroyed something, and now we are trying to restore that with technologies which could actually solve some of the problems, but not all. So I think we still, what I wanted to say here is, we still have a lot of time and a lot of potentiality in India. We still have a lot of natural forests which are providing us and cleaning our water systems. We still have many communities with their traditional knowledge systems of protecting and preserving water and forest ecosystems. And we still have many cities which we still have their water bodies intact, and there are a lot of potentiality to restore some of these, if not all. So I think that is at one level this circular economy in water should operate. It's not just only technological. To me, it is not just only technological solution to reduce waste. Like, that is must. That is not deniable. But then it is basically restoring a lot of your old systems and basically integrating those with the new technology and knowledge systems. So that could actually bring in a lot of solutions for Indian context. And many of our traditional ways of managing resources could be really helpful in planning the new way of circular economy in water management. And many of the new technologies can actually help restore some of the traditional ways of looking into water. So this is the first thing. The second thing, coming to the villages. As I said, Indian villages are still struggling for water in many ways. Like agriculture, as already has been said, takes away legally and illegally both a lot of water. And there is a huge competition between different stakeholders in water sector, and above all, the crisis depends because a lot of water is being now driven to far off places where there is money. So I think cities, in that sense, they not only consume almost 78% of the energy, but they also consume most of the water from the forested watersheds. So cities have actually been already taking share of water from villages, because cities are growing. Cities are aspirational places. We just cannot stop them from growing. That is fine. But then, almost globally also, almost 1/3 of the cities, they depend on water from the forested catchments, far off places. and 75% of all our water, domestic irrigation and other waters, they actually come from the forested catchments that are protected by either protected areas, laws, or communities, mostly indigenous communities. I think that is where a lot of knowledge, a lot of lessons actually remain if we want to put in place something called a circular economy that goes beyond just technological innovations in service providing, service provision. So my point here is, and something that I have been propagating within the network is, this is a time where there is another kind of circular, economy needs to work out, and that we can call a circular natural society, where because cities are growing, because cities are actually living on a lot of resources that the rural areas actually protect. So cities have to give back. So I think this economy is something where the cities should invest a lot because they have the money, and that's why people are coming to the cities. They have the education, they have the money, they have the other facilities, but then they don't have the water. They have already destroyed their own water resources. They have destroyed their own natural assets, natural ecosystems. So what they now need to do is they actually go back to the watersheds, to the forested watersheds far off places, and they should start investing their money and their knowledge system also in preserving those, also to see that those systems are not destroyed any further. I think that is how I call it something, a circular natural economy that involves both city and rural dwellers. So if we can also think of similar models, and if we can actually work out, and in that a lot of people's support is needed, the private sector, the city governments, the national, the provincial and national governments, the civil society, experts, and most importantly the communities with their own traditional knowledge systems and practices. I think if that can also be done, that is one thing I wanted to flag up. The next thing and last thing that I wanted to flag up is, and something that we are trying to do, is reconnecting the youth to the nature, to rivers. And here we have started some initiatives. That's why I wanted to say is that, we have just started to say, because, for example, youth, we asked a lot of youth. So what is a tributary? So they don't know the tributary, because in many cities, this tributary is important. Tributaries of rivers have actually been converted into drains, wastewater drains, stormwater drains. So I think the perception battle, rivers are fighting a perception battle. Water is fighting a perception battle, as I started my talk with. So and the youth who are going to manage these resources, and the future water managers, the people who will be the future, carrying forward the future water governance models, they have started, their knowledge on rivers, their knowledge on water has shrunk to just looking at rivers, which are very important for ecosystems like ours, for societies like ours, which are socio-ecologically, culturally, and economically ingrained into our systems. I think that is where a lot of work is needed. If the youth is actually starting to lose the imagery of rivers as natural ecosystems which need to be protected and which are not places for our waste to be dumped, I think then we have won a battle. We have won a battle, and we have started the first step of circular economy, where I say that go back from the home to the basin. Okay, the tap has come, the water has come, you have money, you can buy bottles, but then don't forget that actually the water is coming from the basin, and recharging the basin itself requires a lot of stakeholders. It requires forest to be regenerated. It requires a lot of recharging efforts through surface water bodies. And your imagery, your perception about rivers should not shrink to just a line, a flow line, a canal, or a drain line. So if that happens, I think we are losing a battle, and our circular economy models will also not sustain, because at the perception level, if I'm just thinking water as something which is a commodity, and which is something that if I have money, I can always use and abuse and whatever, then I think we're not going to win whatever kind of sustainable models we are actually trying to promote. So in this campaign, that's what we are now trying to make them understand what the tributaries are, how important they are, how connected are these ecosystems, starting from the forested watersheds to your tap, to your flush. How connected are these ecosystems? And if we actually be successful in reversing the perception that has already sort of crept into the minds of the young generation at the moment, most of them, I don't generalize, but most of them that we have already observed, then I think our models of recycling, reusing, and renovating, rejuvenating are going to succeed and sustain. And then we can actually create a lot of water managers who think about all these concepts that we are saying, all the great concepts of green economy, nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based approaches. I think all this is what is required, and we all know cannot sustain unless the Generation X, the millennials, their perceptions are actually reversed to an extent that they understand and they love what Violeta started saying, the love for water. And love and water both are almost like the same wavelength. They run on the same wavelength, and I would say they run together. So I think that is how, if we start working, a lot of solutions are at our hands, and a lot of potentiality exists. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranjan, and it is certainly a privilege to have this opportunity to learn from someone like you, who is as knowledgeable and who has been working at grassroots level. I must say that your hard work and perseverance with which you work on water management is truly admirable. And thank you for taking on the important task of water management in a state like Odisha. Of course, the need of such management is in every nook and corner of the world in today's times. And I think many of your opinions, perspectives were very much relatable, because I myself have seen many people I have come across who are still in denial mode that water is not an infinite source. They always believe, they would love to believe that water is infinite. And I think it's high time that we should wake up to this reality that water is not infinite. There is limit to water. And we cannot take water for granted, that water will always be available. So thank you so much for this message. And I want to ask you one question, Mr. Ranjan, if you allow me.
Please.
I have learned in many parts of Odisha, groundwater is very contaminated and it has high level of nitrate, almost in 28 districts out of 30 districts, while iron is found to be above the prescribed limit. Is that water still drinkable, or are you putting that through circular economy to some other function or some other task?
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a very, very important question. Not only in Odisha, I think many parts of India, people are in fact forced to drink contaminated water because the projects are very costly. The one thing that I did not touch upon is and perhaps the previous speaker also was, in a way, I think Elvira was also trying to say, budgets are very important because the governments work in a way that they have to have budgets, they have to have plans. So many places in India are arsenic impacted. The water is contaminated by arsenic. Water is many parts of Odisha, for example, are contaminated by fluoride. That is much more a menace than actually the iron content that you were saying. So, but then the local water resources have to be managed in a way, and then the water quality testing, monitoring, and then correcting the sources is something that is very intense, that requires a lot of resources. and many places governments have been trying to sort of the circular kind of sort of systems where they can bring in water from, like for example, for the fluoride impacted areas, they are trying to get surface water connectivity from some other distance places. For the iron areas, there have been initiatives to sort of reduce the iron content through in situ filters in the water sources. So I think there have been there have been efforts, but it's a huge task, and I don't think we're still we're still very much on on sort of we have been able to do that. So a lot of time. There is one more area thing that actually is happening, and that is also linked to climate change in a way, and the way groundwater extraction is the linkage between climate crisis and local extraction. That is the saline impacted areas in most of the coastal areas. The accretion and the subsistence and the sea level rise issue together is actually making a lot of freshwater ecosystems saline in the coasts. And Odisha's coastline is also facing the same problem, a lot of that problem, and that also is requiring a lot of intervention. So I think desalination is still a costly affair at the moment, and it has got its other issues. So for the kind of one thing that we must all understand is each state, each geography has its own challenges, has its own issues, and each country has its own, like in some parts of US, for example, Louisiana and all, they are using sort of your federal budget to support people who are being impacted by sea level rise, and they are all their mates. But there are areas where you see insurance coverage is being sought for supporting people who are facing water crisis and other climate crises. So in areas like Odisha, it is the government which has to take the responsibility of providing all the kind of water. So then there are issues where priorities, budget allocation, and then of course the person power, the technology support, and other support. One crisis that in India we face is our water testing and monitoring facility is still not up to standard. That's what I feel.
Totally agree, Mr. Ranjan Panda. Yeah. We are slightly running short of the time, and we will definitely get back to this discussion if time permits. And we request you to stay with us till the end of the event, because one more great presentation is coming up. So please, we request you to stay with us, because if time permits, then we will have a little bit more discussion about it. And we have covered some of the great points in the previous presentation, and now it's time to move on to the next one. Our next speaker is from Switzerland, Ms. Gina Serene-Birard, a sustainability expert who aims to enhance in ecosystem management. She understands the connections between the various sub-areas of sustainability with specific focus on water, and is skilled in breaking down complex topics into understandable and actionable parts. Please welcome her. Over to you, Gina.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for having me here at this wonderful webinar. I'm really honored to speak and to connect with you all. So let me shortly start with my presentation so we can go into the whole topic that I prepared for you today. So let me start my presentation so that you can see it whole screen. Perfect. So as Rajini did introduce me perfectly well, thank you very much for that, Rajini. So also thank you very much, Violetta, for your inspirational words at the beginning of the presentation. And also thank you from the bottom of my heart, Elvira and Ranjan, for this really, really interesting and also very inspiring presentations that you gave. It's kind of like beautiful to be connected with such interesting people and such skilled people as well. So thank you very, very much for that. So I can connect to many points you raised during your presentations, even if our perspectives are very different, as Rajini already has said, because I'm going to speak from the perspective of Switzerland. Specifically, I am diving into the topic of wastewater treatment at the special case in Switzerland today. So as Elvira did introduce biofactories, we don't really use the word within the context of wastewater treatment in Switzerland as biofactory, but I definitely relate to this term that got kind of introduced to me, as it is a biofactory that we are having, or a lot of biofactories that we are having in Switzerland, which are playing a very important role in conservation and in sustainability as well. So let me show you shortly the agenda of today, as I'm going to have a short introduction about my relationship to water. I will then dive into the topic of wastewater treatment in Switzerland with a general overview and info. It's about the outcome, what we are doing, and especially also where does it originate from, and also the importance of the whole wastewater treatment that it has for society and for all ecosystems on the world. We will have a specified look into the different wastewater treatment steps. So today I'm gonna show you and explain to you how wastewater is treated in wastewater treatment plants, specifically in Switzerland. And I try to hold my presentation short, 10 to 15 minutes. So we're going to have an overview over everything. And for sure, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask or even connect with me after the webinar as well, via email or also via LinkedIn. I'm really happy to have a chat. So now let us have a look at what I'm doing, why I'm talking about wastewater treatment, and generally what's my relationship I have with water. So first of all, I am a tour guide in a wastewater treatment plant in Switzerland. So I'm guiding students, I'm guiding private groups over the whole plant, and I'm explaining to them what it means to clean wastewater at this site that I'm working on. And so I'm pretty much mostly having an impact in educating students and educating people about wastewater treatment. And so as we know, as Ranjan also did say, and also Elvira did mention, that it is really, really important to connect the youth to nature, to connect people to nature, to connect people to water, as water is nature and inverse. So it's really important that we have an eye on that. And it's also something which really lies close to my heart, to connect people to the whole topic. So also my background, maybe shortly, I studied sustainable development at the University of Basel. And I also studied my bachelor's and studied political economy to kind of give you a context what I was educating about. And so I can really relate to the whole aspect of having a connection to water and having a heart-based connection to water that all of you, all of the speakers did mention. Because I was, in my master's thesis, I did study cultural values of a sense of place. So the connection of people to places. And I wanted to know what the role of those cultural values are in supporting collaborations between farmers and planners of water management projects. So in a specific case of a revitalization of a river called Reuss in my specific case. So I'm really, really connected to bioregionality, to bioregionalism, to really connecting people where their hearts are, and to kind of come from there to really take care of whole ecosystems and to connect people to ecosystems, right? So at the moment right now, besides having being a tour guide at the wastewater treatment, I also work as a partner engagement manager at Copalana. It's a small startup which connects companies, NPOs, and volunteers to also really step up in the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals to kind of have an impact and work together to change something and to make the future a better place, right? So that's about myself, and I'm now diving into the whole thing. What is wastewater treatment? How we are doing it? Why are we doing it? So let me shortly show you the next slide about the wastewater treatment in general. So origin. So we in Switzerland, so people in Switzerland, the society did start pretty early with kind of wanting to clean water. We started in 1917 with the first wastewater treatment plant that was built then. So also it took a long time to really kind of establish such infrastructures that we have now in Switzerland. So the treatment plant that I'm working at in specific, was built in 1974. So you see 1917, 1974, it's like a long time period where the whole infrastructure was built up so that all of the wastewater that industries and people create in Switzerland can be cleaned and can be treated, right? What are the wastewater treatment plants doing in specific? So the outcome after water is leaving the wastewater treatment plants is like the wastewater, so the cleaned wastewater is being fed back into the surface water. So we are not producing drinking water in the wastewater treatment plants, but we are producing water which is safe to be released to the water bodies, right? And so we really want to reduce the negative effects of wastewater and waste on the water bodies and the environment to really ensure an environmentally friendly disposal and cleaning. That was kind of the goal that Switzerland had when we were building all those wastewater treatment plants. So we've got like 750 big plants in Switzerland, and we've got 3,500 small ones. So you can imagine what huge infrastructure that means. We are cleaning around 1,430 million cubic meter of water per year. So it's like a huge thing handling wastewater, right? Especially because Swiss people or people living in Switzerland are using so much drinking water. It's like around 162 liters of drinking water daily, and you've seen in Elvira's presentation, it's mostly to flush toilets and to take showers and things, right? So it is really important that we can clean the water that is used. And this is done by those wastewater treatment plants because we really want to ensure a safe and high water quality, right? This is like the one of the main points why we really need to clean it, besides the biodiversity. Because as you can imagine, when wastewater is being put into ecosystems, into water bodies, which is like wastewater which is not treated yet, this means that a lot of nutrients are being flushed into water bodies, as Ranjini, you did mention regarding the nitrate, right? The nitrogen which is in there, or also the phosphorus which is in there. And this means that in the beginning, when you start putting a lot of nutrients into water bodies, in the beginning, vegetation is coming up, a lot of vegetation is growing, and the ecosystem is thriving in the beginning. But the problem is, if it's like too many nutrients in the water, this means that all the vegetation which has been growing has to decay at some point in time. And if organic material needs to be decayed, a lot of oxygen is used, right? When plants live, they produce oxygen. When plants are decaying, it's oxygen which is used to decay the whole plant material. And so all the oxygen is getting rid out of water bodies. And then the ecosystem collapses, the water ecosystem dies, and everything dies that was living in water ecosystems. And so this is one of the main points, that it's really important to clean wastewater before releasing it to the ecosystem again. Also, one important point is health, for sure, as you can imagine why it is important to do that. So just shortly about the development, like 90-70% of inhabitants in Switzerland are connected to the wastewater cleaning, and we definitely also need to develop regarding phosphorus recycling. For the moment, it's clear we can extract phosphorus out of the wastewater before it's released back to ecosystems, but we then need to recycle phosphorus after that. And this is something that Switzerland or the universities are working hardly on it to kind of find a good way to do that. And also Switzerland wants to develop in the elimination of the micropollutants, because at the moment, many micropollutants are still staying in the water that is released to water bodies. And we are building like new steps of cleaning at the end of the big water treatment plants to really eliminate 50% of the micropollutants that are in there still. So that's it regarding the whole overview and context of wastewater. We are now going to go into the whole steps of wastewater treatments. I mean, I'm going to give you a short overview what the main steps are, right? So that you can understand how it is done and why, what it's all about, right? I mean, as Ranjan was mentioning, nature is the best technology, right? So we definitely know that nature can clean water the best way. The only thing is, like, as we have so much of wastewater produced, it's important that we kind of help nature to clean it. And so we have those wastewater treatment steps in place, right? So let us have a look at the first step. So the first steps are the racks. So meaning that we are separating solids from the wastewater. This is, for example, toilet paper, or let's say organic material, as well as leaves that are coming from the streets and are being kind of flushed down into the channels. And so those things are arriving at the water treatment plant, and those racks are helping us to separate those solids from the water. The first two racks, the coarse racks we have, you don't see them on the picture. They have like 5 centimeter diameter, so that everything which is bigger than 5 centimeters will be stopped there and extracted. So 1/3 of the solid materials are extracted there. On the right-hand side, on here on the picture, you can see 2 of the fine racks. So they've got like 1 centimeter diameters, and when water is flowing through it, then 2/3 of it can be extracted of everything which is solid and bigger than 1 centimeter, right? And the whole solids materials that are being taken out of the water, those are being brought to a screening press that separates the water from the whole solid waste, and the waste is being brought to the waste incineration plant, which is which we have a lot in Switzerland as well, but this is another topic, right? So when you can see these racks, when you have a look at the bottom of these racks, you will see this more or less. So the water is flowing from below, is flowing through the racks, and here all the solid materials are being stopped. And as soon as enough materials was stopped there, automatically it's automated that the machines are starting to pulling this waste up, and to bring it to the press. So this is kind of like a view that you would have if you would join me on a live guided tour, right? So let us have a short look at the second step. So we have a grit and a fat chamber. So the water is being brought to these tanks, and the flow is being reduced so that heavy materials are being settled down, and really light materials are floating up on the top of the water, right? So then scrapers are coming and are scraping the heavy materials like sand most of the time, and the sand is being separated from the water. And the rest, which is floating up on the surface, is also being kind of taken away with those scrapers. And so then we can kind of like separate solids which are smaller than 1 centimeter in diameter. The third step is the primary settlement tank. So after we separated the solid material, we now are separating the primary sludge. It's like the sewage sludge, kind of, let's say, the fecals of the people which are connected to the whole system. Those are sometimes being dissolved a little bit. Now, not fully, but dissolved. And so they cannot be taken out in the first 2 steps. So again, you can see those primary settlement tanks here in the picture. The water, these ones are empty right now. I thought it's interesting for you to see how it looks like when no water is in there. But surely you can see here, from those holes, water is being floated into those primary settlement tanks. And then the flow rate is reduced again. This is really important because we want the primary sludge, so the sewage sludge, to settle down so that it can be a sediment on the bottom, so that we can again separate it from the whole water with scrapers again. So you can imagine here in those huge tanks, water would be filled up, it would stay in there for around 1 hour, and then sewage is gonna settle down. And on the bottom, as soon as this is the case, those scrapers that you can see here are automatically being started, and they go down on the bottom of those tanks. And on the bottom itself, then the scrapers slowly push the sewage sludge away. So they cannot go fast, because otherwise all the sewage sludge would again mix up with the water, right? So then, after we could separate the sewage, we then bring them to the digestion tanks. As already Elvira did mention, we have digestion tanks where we can convert primary sludge to biogas, to energy, basically. So sewage sludge is being dewatered. Then it's brought to the digestion tank. You can see here on the picture and on that one as well. We have 4 of them on this example of the wastewater treatment plant that we're looking at. And the sewage sludge is producing biogas for around 500 households per year. Because when we have a stable temperature of 38 degrees Celsius within those tanks, with no oxygen coming in, bacteria are producing methane out of the sewage that we have in there. Within those 20 days, half of the organic materials are being converted. And so then we also can store gas in this gas tank you can see here, and gas tanks on other wastewater treatment plants as well, that we can use to drive, to cook, whatever. So we now had a look at the mechanical part of the cleaning. Now I want to have a look to the biological treatment, which is also very important. We had machines working for us in the step from 1 to 3, and now we're going to have a look at biology, how biology is helping us to treat the water. So we have the biological treatment. This is kind of a picture of the water, how it looks like within the biological treatment. And interestingly, before we could see on the other picture, the water was kind of like not as dirty looking as it does look now. But the thing is, we are now adding a biological sludge to the water. So even if you want to take things out and clean the water, it is needed to put a sludge in there again, right? So that's something which a lot of people don't really would think of, how to clean wastewater, but it is a really important step, because the biological sludge is being enriched and living from all of those microorganisms which are in there. And those microorganisms, they help us to separate the dissolved nutrients in the water. So for example, nitrogen, as well as phosphorus that we already mentioned, as well as protein, which is in the water, starch and sugar is in the water, because people eat and wash their dishes and do whatever, right? So this is something which is definitely needed to guarantee a safe water release to ecosystems. And for those processes, we need aeration installations within the whole tanks, because some processes need oxygen, for example, so that microorganisms can treat protein, starch, and sugar. They basically eat it, right, and kind of make it go away. And some processes don't need oxygen, like for example, nitrification from nitrogen to nitrate, and then back to kind of nitrogen, which is part of the air instead of the water. So yeah, the biological sludge is like our main thing that is important to kind of really separate dissolved nutrients. And we also have, in this step, we have a kind of chemical treatment, because phosphorus can be taken out of the water as we are adding an iron solution to the biological sludge, because this iron solution binds the phosphorus to it, so that we can extract it within the biological sludge. We can extract it from the water. Right, and we definitely also have a lot of laws in place which are telling us to remove phosphor, to remove nitrogen as well, so that we can guarantee the safety of ecosystems. So after this treatment, this biological treatment, we definitely need to take away the biological sludge again.
Gina, I have a request.
Yeah.
Can you wind up your presentation a little fast, because we are running short of time? So
I can tell.
wind up?
That's no problem, because I'm already at the end of my presentation. So it's kind of a good timing, right? So if we are looking at my last slide, it's just kind of like a wrapping up of all the whole treatment steps, which are really important to help our ecosystems. I mean, I will not go into all the steps anymore as of a matter of time, right? But generally, for myself, I'm really happy to kind of educate people, and also people from schools, about the whole theme, to really give them an idea of how important water is and how important the treatment of water is. And from this perspective, I really want to thank you for listening to my presentation and to inviting me. If you have questions, just let me know, and let's stay connected through water. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gina, for your passion for learning and sharing your knowledge, which is truly inspiring and fascinating. Yes, and thank you for taking on this important task of water management and sharing your knowledge with us. Now, we have received a question from Mr. Alexander for all three speakers, and his question is, what do you see as key to stimulating the shift to living or livable cities? Shall I repeat the question? What do you see as key to stimulating the shift to living or livable cities? Anyone?
Yeah, can I go first? If it is
Please.
okay.
Yeah.
I think there is one concept that I always believe, that cities are actually made of a lot of indigenous knowledge systems, and many people who are actually migrating from the villages, from the far off places, from the forests, from the farms, come to the cities with a lot of knowledge of living directly with nature for generations. But then as and when they land up in the city, all that knowledge is wasted. That's not used, because like many of the informal workers, they are basically they go into becoming wage laborers in some construction or something else, somewhere domestic workers. So I think one of the ways to make, and most importantly, most of these people are living in shanty towns within the cities, on the river banks, on the drains, and on the natural spaces. So I think one way of making the cities livable is how to integrate these informal colonies, and how to integrate their knowledge into making the cities actually green spaces, and where the cities can actually take responsibility of the green infrastructure. So if knowledge systems can be integrated, that is one of the ways to make the cities more livable, and where other infrastructural needs can be taken up by the other part of the city. But the knowledge systems of nature-based solutions can also be taken from these people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranjan, for sharing your perspective and for sharing your ideas, which is very, very valuable. May I ask the same question from Gina?
Yes, sure. I mean, it's a very broad question, right? And if we would have the solution to it, then we would have changed a lot already. I mean, there are a lot of changes going on, but still, I definitely resonate very much with the answer from Ranjan, because from my perspective, it's like very important to combine the bottom-up approach as well as top-down approach, because the bottom-up approach mostly, I think also we have to connect the regional communities to their water management. Because there it's where people see what it means, right? To run short or to have floods or whatever, so that the people really can connect emotionally to the whole topic and how they are impacted by all the changes going on through climate change, for example. The top-down approach, I would say, it's like it also needs kind of governments in place which really see the importance, and which definitely also make and give money for infrastructure, for changes, for studies, for everything, right, around the topics, to kind of see how could we make things better. So it's not only the people from top down that can change. I mean, it's coming from there, because the people in the communities are also part of the political instances, ideally. But I definitely think it's like both sides have to connect to kind of make water systems better and help ecosystems thereby.
Absolutely, absolutely. Gina and Elvira, what would you like to add to what our two speakers have already spoken?
Yeah, I mentioned the thing that I think that the COVID already triggered a little bit this perspective. And I think that aside from everything that's said, that when you introduce the health angle, which is making cities not only more livable, but more healthy, people really do like cling to that a lot and demand more from that from governments and policymakers. And in the end, it turns into measures like when you're talking about clean air, and to having like more open spaces where people can actually like do sports and things. Well, all those things that are related to healthy living cities are also the ones that are kind of an easier transition to understand, and that people relate to them more, and in the end they demand them more, and they're also like a very positive measure to see that doesn't really affect them the way that they live in there nowadays, like other type of measures that would be more like intrusive. Yeah, I think you always have to frame things in a positive way and what it's going to be better for you, and that gets people more engaged to demand it, and also for politicians or policymakers or governments to see how that can also benefit the population that they manage. And the health angle is certainly one of those.
Absolutely. And I mean, Natasha, do we have any more questions for our speakers?
I have one question, if I may.
Please.
Just to maybe to Gina, because starting in 1917 with all these actions in Switzerland, probably was followed or supported by different regulatory interventions. So I was wondering, what did you find the most essential in the sense of legislative support in order to get the systems, because the numbers are quite impressive, in place, 700 big ones and over 1,000, 3,000 smaller ones, so pretty much probably every community. So how did you achieve that? Is that the legal support to it?
Definitely, it's a really important point with the legal framework. So Switzerland has several laws related to water management and protection in place. So maybe one or two that I'm going to mention, or maybe more, that I think are really important. So the Water Protection Act, which kind of like is an overview law that aims to protect the quality and quantity of water resources in Switzerland by regulating the activities that are connected to it, and maybe also cause pollution or depletion of water resources, because we definitely have a big responsibility, as a lot of water is starting, or the springs of the water sources are in Switzerland because of our Alps, right? So it's really important that we take care, because a lot of people are using it after us. We also have the wastewater ordinance in place, which is a regulation that sets out the standards for the treatment and the discharge of wastewater in Switzerland. It limits pollutants and other substances which maybe also could hurt water quality, and this is also being checked regularly by different institutions within the different wastewater treatment plants, right? And also maybe something that I can think of which is connected is the Fisheries Act, which regulates the protection of fish and other aquatic species. And this is like very important to see the whole circle, right, of it, so that we definitely need to also restrict on fishing, and also restrict activities that maybe could harm living populations within the water bodies, right? Is that answering your question, Valetta? Perfect.
Thank you so much, Gina. And with this, we proceed towards wrapping up our session. And we have got a beautiful song on the theme of water, composed by and sung by our friend Yuko Kudo from Japan. We are going to play that.
Yes, Rajni, thank you very much. This has been, again, a very informative, straight down to the earth session with lots of very concrete operational experiences shared. So a big appreciation from me as well. Before we go into the song, I just like to kind of briefly remind people of the events that are still coming. So today is the fourth event that we completed, which is the March 29th. But then many more are coming until the end of the year. So I'm hoping that you will, I hope that you will engage in the future as well, either as a participant or a future speaker too. And this is now the song that one of our colleagues, Ecocivilisation Wing for Japan, contributed together with her friends. And it was actually put together at the beginning of the Year of Water, or when we agreed on the Year of Water. So the comment and the content is very much appropriate. So I apologize ahead of time. There might be some challenges again, but as I wrote in the comment, we had some computer crash right at the beginning of the session where all music was appropriately handled. So I hope that it will work well, because I hear it well, but I could see in the chat that there were some challenges. Just give me a second.
Of the sky,
Can you hear it?
the earth crying silently. The heavens demand of the sky. Beg of the earth crying silently. Why do they seek so much blood from a stone? What do you do when you feel so alone? Reach out when you need direction. Reach out, you'll find connection. Reach out through storm and through fear. We are water. We are here. Together we rise and together we the current and bathe in the stream. Together we rise and together we dream. Join with our families, we are not afraid. For droplet by droplet, an ocean is made. Reach out when you need direction. Reach out, you'll find connection. Reach out through storm and through fear. We are water. We are here. Water, please, water, flowing water. We are water, be as water, flowing water, formless water. We are water, free as water, steady as the endless water, steady as the endless water, steady as the endless sea. Reach out when you need direction. Reach out, you'll find connection. Reach out through rivers of song. We are water. Reach out, you'll find connection. Reach out through rivers of song. We are water. We are water. We are water. We are water. We belong.
Rajni, back to you.
Thank you so much, Violeta, and thank you, Alvira, Ranjan, Gina, for sharing such valuable insights, for bringing your expertise, experience, learning through this very interactive session and making this session so relatable and worthwhile. Thank you once again for being with us. We would also like to thank our participants for their active participation, interest, and time. And please keep visiting www.ecocivilisation.eu for further events and their details. And thank you again for joining us today. And we will see you next time. Till then, take care and bye-bye.